Cool. Okay, guys. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the South Wairarapa District Council. Again, I will reiterate, due to the current COVID restrictions, Council are holding this meeting via video conference, which means elected members and members of the public can't be physically present. All participating members count for the purpose of this meeting quorum in accordance with Clause 25B of Schedule 7 of the Local Governments Act 2002. The meeting will be recorded and made available on Council's YouTube channel via a link from the Council's website, and a summary of the meeting will also be made available on the Council's website shortly following the meeting, in accordance with Clause 47A of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987. And also I'll do my standard reminder that please treat this as if it was a meeting where you would be all in attendance. Councillor Eames, would you read the affirmation?
Thank you. Yes. We pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make reasonable and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the South Wairarapa district at large. We commit individually and as a council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the vision and values we have adopted in our long-term plan strategy document in order to energise, unify and enrich our district.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eames. First one, apologies. We have had no apologies received. Conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? None. Thank you very much. Public participation. There is no public participation today. Extraordinary business. We have no extraordinary business items on the agenda. And then we'll go straight on to the section B, proposed governance arrangements for the Wairarapa recovery. So we're now considering this report B1. On the agenda, there are two...
Alex, sorry, I've just got my hand up, but I just wanted to, as an acknowledgement, I'd like to acknowledge all of our Wairarapa farmers, please, for the rapa run that was done, sending the bales through to Hawke's Bay, and it makes me really proud to be a part of a rural and provincial community. Thanks.
Cool. Well, and while we're there, are there any tributes, since this is a council meeting, even if it is extraordinary, are there any tributes or acknowledgements in addition to the one from Pip? Councillor Maynard. Right, moving on. So we're now considering the report B1 of the proposed governance arrangements for the Wairarapa recovery report. This report is being considered by all three of the Wairarapa councils today. Now, there are three documents there, but it's DGAG 20 May 20, proposed governance arrangements for the Wairarapa, South Wairarapa District Council revised is the document we're looking at. There are some track changes as a result of some last minute adjustments leading up to this meeting. Do I have a mover to receive this report? Thank you, Councillor Plimmer, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hay. Okay, I'm now going to ask for a verbal vote, so if you could take off your mute buttons. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against, the motion is carried. Mr. Wilson, could you possibly read us through this document and comments?
Certainly, thank you. So we enter the next phase post-COVID, which in civil defence and emergency management terms is recovery, following the response. So the paper today basically sets out a combined governance option for you to consider, where the three Wairarapa councils can work as one. The key here is that local government leadership is crucial to support recovery. Equally, we need to do that in partnership with Ngāiwi, because the key work that needs to be done is developing a recovery plan and then overseeing the implementation of that plan over time. So the key things that need to be done by the governance committee is having one voice for all three councils, so that, that a plan can be signed off. The group, the governance group, can be given the mandate to speak on behalf of the Wairarapa, particularly with central government. And it also assumes that there will be a national framework, so that there's close working relationship with the Wairarapa and central government in that. So the key questions in the paper, and I'll take it as read. The first question is, do you support a combined recovery effort, including a central leadership group and plan, and therefore a combined governance arrangement? And then the second decision is making sure that there are collaborative arrangements for recovery planning and oversight, and what kind of level that is. And there are three options in the paper, from a formal decision-making body through to just an informal coalition of the willing. The recommendations in the paper suggest a formal decision-making paper, decision-making body, which, as you'll note, is a formally constituted committee between the three councils. It's open to the public and occurs with all the requirements of the Local Government Act. The terms of reference for the formal body are in Appendix 2, and you'll see that they require some delegation from council. And in the recommendations, if you accept the terms of reference, you're accepting the delegation. So the delegations are probably the key things, as well as the responsibilities. But the delegations are essentially to prepare and adopt a Wairarapa recovery plan, advocate on behalf of the Wairarapa for recovery resources and support for the Wairarapa, liaise directly with any formal national or regional recovery entities on behalf of the Wairarapa. So the key here is, as we enter the recovery phase, we want agile, responsive leadership in essentially what is a very ambiguous area. We don't quite know, and New Zealand has never had a recovery process that is like this. Usually recovery occurs when there's significant infrastructure failure, such as Kaikoura, such as Christchurch, where the objective in terms of what you need to do to reinstate infrastructure is actually quite clear. In this situation, it's about the recovery, the economic recovery and social recovery of our communities. And probably one of the key things in the form of the membership of this committee is that it's essentially a co-governance arrangement with our two major iwi partners, and recommends up to 4 iwi participants. The Ko Wairarapa Tēnei is the plan that Ngā iwi have developed for the response area, and they've done a fantastic job on that. So we're recommending a combined governance with iwi up to 4 members, so they can choose the participants that would actually work for them. They're very strong that they want to involve the rūnanga. Personally, I don't think it's up to council to describe the form that iwi choose. Obviously our business is council business, and so that's why the recommendation is up to 4. It allows the iwi to actually nominate their own representatives. In terms of council participation, the paper's suggesting the mayor, obviously for the leadership that provides, and 1 other council member. In part, that's anticipating there will be a number of arms and legs that will connect to this, such as the Wairarapa economic development work that you heard about at the combined council meeting. And it would be crucial to have seniority at that, such as the deputy mayor, and we need to consider those types of options and keep that alive, hence the rationale for 1 other member. The main thing here also is in giving that delegation to the committee. Remember, it's an outward-looking community, so this does not provide any delegation for normal council decision-making and/or any operational matters. So it's an outward-looking entity supporting the economic and social development of our community. It is not around decision-making for anything to do with normal business-as-usual activity for councils. So that's a summary of the paper. Obviously, any questions through you, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly. Councillors, do anyone have any questions regarding this document? I might start the ball rolling if I can, then at you, Councillor Plimmer. So could you comment, Mr. Wilson, on what would happen if one of the councils did not pass this recommendation, and would is it likely that under the wording of this that a committee of 2 councils could still move forward with regards to a recovery plan, or does this require all 3 councils to pass?
No, it is prepared in a way that allows, if one council chooses not to participate, then we can simply join up with the other council. Of course, it'd be disappointing if we got to that situation.
However, we can't allow, if one council didn't pass it, we can't allow this to not be actioned. I think this is important to have a recovery committee in place. Councillor Plymouth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Harry, look, part of my experience would say that the larger the number of people on any committee, the less agile it becomes. And just rough count, there's 10 already, with 2 from each council and 4 iwi, let alone the other people who will have representation on there. My concern is that this becomes very unwieldy and actually doesn't do the job that we need it to do by being agile. You got any comment on that?
So bear in mind that so as I reiterated before, so the current membership is would be 6 from council, so it's a mayor and 1 other representative, and up to 4 from iwi. So there may be other parties co-opted as advisors, but they don't have any decision-making rights as they have no delegation. Because obviously there'll need to be links with the economic development and social development area. So as it stands on the paper, it's a committee of 10, but equally, if we genuinely want to have partnership with iwi, we need to make sure that we are providing for the number that they see as important to provide the leadership, particularly for their recovery.
And if I can comment as well, Alistair, I'm relatively comfortable with that number. It is getting larger for an agile committee. However, I think that it's workable and it ticks the correct boxes from a representation perspective, which are just essential. Yeah.
My only concern is making sure it's actually able to do the job that it can without just being a talk fest. Can I just ask one other question on this as well, because it's sort of linked? You've got the 3 different options there, Harry, and obviously right at the start, agility and decision making needs to be reasonably quick. So are we able to adjust the delegation as we go? So allowing perhaps the committee to have a lot of delegation to start with, and as the recovery moves, reduce the amount of delegation they have as the recovery progresses?
Well, I mean, if you look at what it's actually there to do, the delegation is literally, as I suggested, simply to sign off the plan. The plan hasn't been written yet, and that will take some time to bring together. I mean, this is an oversight and communication mechanism and connecting various parts of our wider Wairarapa community. That's where the agility needs to occur. So I don't think there's any additional delegation that's required to do that. I think what will occur is once you have the plan, then and that'll describe some actions that need to be occurred. That's when you would say, well, actually, if we want to move the plan quickly, do we need to consider delegation? So I think this is sufficient to start off with, but it may actually require further delegation in the future.
Cool. Councillor Eames, then we had Councillor Maynard, Councillor Jepson. Did I miss someone else there? Okay, so Councillor Eames, and then Councillor West.
Yeah, just another, on the same approach, Harry, there's a comment made there in 2.4.4 about the role of the regional council, and it suggests that the local member could or should be a member of the group, but that's going to be put on hold until future consideration. Is that appropriate not to have regional council on at this stage?
I think it's 6 of one and half dozen the other. I think it does relate more to once we actually have the response, when we have the recovery plan, and if the recovery plan requires considerable support from the regional council, that's when you would look at the membership to reflect who we need there. So that's essentially what's said in the paper. So rather than do it from the start, let's keep that going as an option.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Maynard.
And I'm just a little bit concerned. Is there a draft plan? I mean, what we're doing is we're in effect putting people and making a decision today on putting people into onto a committee that has no plan. so that's a little bit concerning for me to vote on something that we don't know what we're actually voting with regards to.
If I could answer that.
And a movable beast, if it's a, you know, it could be, exactly. And so therefore the delegations are just worrying me a little bit. So if anyone can help to alleviate my concerns, that'd be amazing.
Cool. If you note, Councillor Maynard, this is to look at and approve or comment on a plan that's put forward by the statutory recovery manager. So as such, until his plan is developed and his officially, I don't think he officially sits in the seat as the recovery manager until the end of the month. And then the plan will be coming through for this committee to then consider and comment on. So yes, it is, we don't know what the content of that plan is, but this is the ability or the vehicle to make sure that we have local and regional comment on what plan he is proposing to put forward through to the CDM. So yes, we are, but we need this committee in place before that plan is put forward. Yeah, and able to react. Would you agree, Harry, on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's not dissimilar to post a council election, where you have the governance in place, and then you iterate and develop the plan with the governance body, and that's the plan. So, I mean, the plan is being worked on as we speak. It would actually be worse, in my opinion, to say, "Here's the plan. Now we need the governance body."
And please also bear in mind that we would like this to be agile. That in a report to council, if the mayor and the councillor say, we need to adjust this to be more agile or more inclusive, this can change. And I would expect it to change a number of times during its existence. Yeah. Councillor Jepson.
Yes, has there been, excuse me, any consideration in putting a farming representative on here, like Federated Farmers or the such? I mean, the rural sector, farming sector, are going to be a big part of this recovery. I mean, it's been identified how they're helping recover the whole nation. I mean, I think, you know, they should be represented in here.
Brian, what it sort of alludes back to Councillor Plimmer's comments regarding agility. This committee will have the ability to co-opt or get advice from a number of different aspects of the community and the economic. So certainly this committee has the ability to go to Federated Farmers, to Willie Beetham, who's quite actively involved anyway with regards to the economic development, the Wairarapa economic development strategy. Yeah. As well as any community groups and social groups, you know, otherwise the committee would end up being up to close to 60 people. So it's the ability of this committee to reference and seek clarification from different industry groups will be crucial.
Oh, well, if that's the case, yeah, I'm happy with that. But I just, you know, they need to have a voice, and I guess having a voting voice is not the be all to end all. I think if you got someone like Willie Beetham there putting the farming rural sector case across, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Councillor West at last. Sorry, Brenda, we can't hear you.
Let's try that. How long is it anticipated that this group is going to be going for? And I speak with reference to kind of like longevity and continuity, because what happens at the end of our election, people move around. So what's the future plan? Is it to keep the same people, or is it to get another group of people and start the ball rolling again?
So in the paper, it talks about keeping the committee alive essentially for the triennium. but it would adjust at each stage as it progresses its plan. So it could dissolve prior to the end, but it describes just staying in place for the triennium.
Yep. And I share the concerns that Brian Jepson asked about, ensuring that the community as a whole was looked at, not just specific parts. So just thought I'd like to say that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hay.
So I've been part of this as part of the shared Wairarapa services. So just in respect to your comment, Alistair, we were very aware of the fact that it needed to be nimble. Originally, it had been suggested only 2 members of iwi were on the committee, and they requested that that be broadened, which we all agreed with. Just got a couple of points. 2.41, where it comments about keeping itself under continuous review. Is there any frequency attached to that, or do you think it's worthwhile drilling down on that a bit more, either Harry or Alex?
I think I'd wait until the plan itself is actually staged, because that should have phases, and you would keep the review linked to the phases of the plan. It's a bit otherwise we can't preempt what that would look like right now.
Okay, and just one other question,
Lee. Also, don't forget that the members of the committee will be reporting back to council, and if you have any concerns, you can raise them at that council meeting to initiate a review if there's something quite important that's missing.
Okay, because that was going to be my other question on how regularly you report back to council. Would that just be 6 weekly at the normal council meetings, or was it the intention to do it more frequently?
If councillors felt that they needed to, I think as the decisions were being made by this committee, they would be shared with councillors. But if you felt that you wanted a more regular issue, then myself and the councillor concerned can prepare an update at any time.
Okay, well, I'd take the view from all the other councillors on that. I'd quite like a reasonably regular update.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I just have to excuse myself for a couple of minutes. Some people just arrived. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
That's fine.
So Berham, just to add to that, remember it is a formally constituted committee, so it would have to report in the same way that any other committee reports via council. So I would anticipate it would almost be a standing agenda item initially until the recovery plan moves into an operational phase.
Great, thanks, Harry.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Colenso.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I've got 2 questions. Firstly, because there are going to be they're proposing 2 representatives on this committee, I feel that there needs to be more of a plan for those people to communicate with councillors before decisions are being made, because those 2 people are going to speak on behalf of 10 of us, and I feel that we need the input into those decisions that are being made prior to them being made. So there has to be some agility or mechanism within those 2 representatives to come back to get feedback from councillors prior to actually committing us to something. And secondly, I feel that there needs to be something said about the cost to councillors, to our council for being part of this, because nothing is free, and therefore that is going to have whatever cost there is in this is going to have an effect on our annual plan, our long-term plan, because this will go to the end of the triennium as proposed. So I feel that there needs to be some monetary figure around what we anticipate spending so that we've got some idea of taking that into account. Thank you.
Would you like me to answer those 2 questions, Mr. Mayor? So obviously, I mean, the 2 members of the committee are representing you, and so would have to need to put in place methods to communicate both we are thinking these things, what are your views, so that they can take the view of the whole council to the table. So that would be part of the process. I would, but and in terms of the second one, right now the only cost to council are staff time participating in the development of the recovery plan. So we have a recovery manager ourselves who is part of the team developing the recovery plan. It's only a part-time role. It's Kim Rubman. Once we have the plan, that's when we'll know what the commitment or what the actual dollar implications are. Right now, the only costs are the time of the elected representatives' participation at the meeting and the staff time in helping with the plan.
So if Kim and 2 other recovery people from each of the councils is working on this as well, then why are they not part of this group from an officer's point? I know this is a governance thing we're talking about, but there has to be some mechanism in that governance group to say that we've got 3 officers working on this as well. Because at this stage we've only got the recovery manager for the Wairarapa in there, and so there needs to be some mechanism to put what officers are thinking as well as what governance are thinking to communicate that whole thing back, and there's no mechanism in that from a shared services point of view, which is what I was part of, to show that.
So it's very similar to the same role that I perform for you. So there's the governance entity. They will have the recovery manager, which is Dave Giddings, will act as the staff advisor to the governance committee, and in turn Dave is supported by the 3 council staff members that are reporting to him as the manager of the recovery. So there's a separation between the governance decision making at an elected level and the operational development of the plans and the work.
Yeah, I mean, if I could also comment, Pam, yes, you are looking to delegate the responsibility for review of the plan and comments. But if we just need to be careful from an agility perspective that those people who have been elected, the mayor and 1 councillor, are not constantly bogging the committee down by constantly having to receive approval from it. That turns the committee into a committee of 30 or 40, potentially, if that happens every time. So certainly you can gauge the effectiveness and the skill on the reports that come back, but there needs to be an element of that these people have been put forward to serve on that committee on your behalf. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you. So there's also the cost of the secretary that each council has to put up. So that's just automatically, that isn't actually in the report as well. So that's an additional cost that hasn't been mentioned yet. And I understand what you're saying with regards to agility. However, I think if there's things that are coming up that have concerns or that are going to affect the South Wairarapa, as the elected members of the South Wairarapa District Council, I would still feel like, it would be very good to still get that information, whether or not it's just via email, just saying, we need your thoughts on this, because I think it's not fair for yourself, Mayor Alex, and for whoever the additional person is, to have to make those some decisions that may affect directly the South Wairarapa District Council without necessarily having the backing of the rest of our governance table.
Okay, that's 2 parts there. Harry, I'll let you comment in a minute on the secretary costs and all that, and perhaps we run over the costs again. On this one, I think we have, as a council and within councillors, we have a very effective ad hoc communication network going. and I think we will just make sure that all of us are happy with the way that those communications occur, and perhaps step it up a bit to possibly ameliorate any concerns you have in that area. I mean, I'm very happy with the level of communications we have and what everyone knows is going on at any point in time. So we'll try and lift that a bit. Harry, could you comment on actual costs as mentioned by Pip?
This will be the same as any joint committee between councils, which we have many of, and we would share amongst the three council the costs of the secretariat, and indeed rotate the secretariat, so it doesn't fall on any one council. We've done that actually through the response area in supporting the EOC. We basically rostered people to support on a weekly basis, and so in terms of the frequency of the governance meetings, there would be secretarial support, but again, they would be shared between the three councils.
Harry, could you also comment before, we've got Councillor Eames and then Councillor Plimmer, but could you also comment on the government's role in funding of these emergency provisions? Has there been any decision or indication made from central government about funding of the level 3 and 4 contributions from different councils and going forward?
No, there hasn't been any indication of central government funding directly, though we do anticipate, and it mentions in the paper, that the centre will be setting up a national coordination body in some form. And of course, we would be asking some of those questions there. It may, I think the likelihood is more that it'll be to be the cost not of the governance support, it'll be in the delivery of the operational plan. So whether it's MSD supporting programs or work to assist people get back to work, etc., etc., etc. So I think the costs the central government will share are more likely to be in the activity that will be undertaken to implement recovery.
Thank you. Councillor Eames, you had a question.
Really just a comment in section 2.4.6 operational, it mentions there resourcing will come, not all resourcing will come from the councils, I guess is what you're saying, Harry, that stuff will be coming from other government agencies. So we're actually covered off there. We really don't know until we get into the
exactly
what's going to come through further at the end. And I can just support what Alex said, that I think the Zoom meetings we're having on, the regular Zoom meetings we're having now on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm finding very beneficial. I think the rest of the team does too. So, I mean, that's the sort of media, I guess, we're talking about and the method of communication. Thank you.
We could certainly make sure that it's a agenda item, just a little, make sure that we touch base and people can raise concerns. Councillor Plimmer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I completely agree with you, but I understand your comments there, Pip. And I think the feedback I've had from people around since we've been doing Zoom meetings is that we seem to be quite a unique council, that we are actually communicating extremely well with each other and working extremely tightly as a team of councillors. That seems to be reasonably unique around the country at the moment. So I think we could be quite proud of that as a group of councillors. And I think, like Garrick said, and you said, Alex, that the Zoom meetings are really good. But in terms of transparency for the public, I take your point, Pip, perhaps we could have it as an agenda item, just a brief at each formal council meeting as to the workings of what's going on in the recovery committee. It just, then everybody in the community actually gets to see what's going on a little bit. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think perhaps I might preempt your comment on this, that probably 6 weekly is not enough with regards to this exact committee, and I think Pam as well has raised this as well. So I mean, let's work amongst ourselves with a level that you're comfortable with. And what we want to address possibly in this meeting, Harry, you might be able to comment on this, is who that second council, who the councillor will be to represent the South Wairarapa on this committee, whether we want to do this today or whether we want to discuss this amongst ourselves and bring that forward into another meeting.
I think you should discuss it amongst just, I mean, it'd be better to, now that you agree to the governor, well, up to you, to make a decision on the paper and then appoint the party later, rather than try and do it now.
So, okay. Any further questions or discussion? Thank you, Councillor Colenso.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a small minor adjustment before we vote on anything. There is in the track change document, the Wairarapa section on page 11 of the Wairarapa recovery. The wording doesn't make sense in the middle of the document there. So in the third paragraph down, it says, whoops, don't lose it, Pam. It says our relatively diverse economy with its backbone primary sector, meaning Wairarapa is better placed than some other parts of the country. Then it goes on to say, however, that does not mean Wairarapa businesses and people are not be significantly adversely impacted. So I think that needs to be the word being in there and not.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We can make that change to the report.
Yeah, I'll just see if there was another one.
Councillor Collins, are you saying with its backbone being the primary sector is the wording change you are suggesting?
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that makes it clearer.
Yeah, I think that we need to, if we're going to vote on it, we need to have that right. Something else.
If we could, we change, take that change as read for the voting perspective, but can we make sure that the other two councils who are also voting on this today are advised of that one word change in the document that's voted on?
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions or discussion, people?
Thank you.
Right. Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to propose the motion 3 and 4, that and I'll read them together, that the Council establishes a formal joint Wairarapa COVID-19 response committee to oversee the recovery of Wairarapa from the COVID pandemic, and that the Council agrees to the draft terms of reference attached for a Wairarapa COVID-19 response committee. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Jetson, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Fox. Right, I'm about to ask for a vote, so if you'd unmute yourselves. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Right. Well done, guys. So I think it was a good conversation and certainly brought up some important parts that we need to be aware of going forward. We now move on to number B2, review of the COVID-19 emergency measures and reinstatement of committees. So this is report B2. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor West. A seconder? Councillor Colenso. I'm about to do a vote. So all those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against, the motion is carried. Mr. Wilson, would you like to comment on this report?
Yeah, in essence, this is recommending that Council move to reinstate the committees for Level 1 and Level 2 COVID-19, allows governance to return to normal in step with Council operations, but also anticipates that if we should return to Level 3 or Level 4 because of a cluster outbreak, that we actually have, we still have the emergency delegations and are able to utilise those. So it's a precautionary approach. So it is fairly straightforward unless people have any issues they'd like to discuss or questions.
Hey, first question, Councillor Colenso.
Sorry, I seem to be talking a lot this time. Point 3 that you've got in there, it agrees to the purposes of COVID-19 emergency, that emergency delegation to the Chief Executive remains in place and will be reviewed under Level 1. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I think the emergency delegation should only be for a Level 3 and 4. Because that is the time where we aren't able to have the movement. We can still use a Zoom meeting at the stage to put that back in place if we should move to back into a Level 3, but I think that we have the agility and things like that to approve any expenditure or anything like that from now on. So I would be voting against that. I think that the emergency delegations do not need to be in place for a level 2 or 3.
Thank you, Councillor Colenso. Before we go on to that, Harry, would you like to respond to that possibly?
Look, to be honest, I'm not particularly concerned, and we'll take your guidance. I mean, just bear in mind that delegations are very strict and very limited to me in that kind of situation. So you're not talking about a large-scale delegation at all. They're simply to do with the emergency provisions. But again, I just take your guidance.
Yeah. If I might comment on that too before we move to Councillor Fox, but I think the changes in the ability to hold Zoom meetings with quora has actually changed possibly the intent or need for that particular provision. So provisionally, prior to hearing everyone else, I might be agreeing with Councillor Colenso. Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Mayor Alex. You and Pam have both just said exactly what I was going to say as well. We've got the technology that's available now. We're looking at more of a return to business as usual, so our council processes and delegation should probably reflect that. And if we need to, we can be pretty fleet-footed to review that.
Karen, do you have any comment on that one from a legalities perspective?
We propose to just retain that emergency delegation, and as Harry mentioned, that it is quite strict parameters, and it really is a belt and braces if council isn't, or the emergency committee isn't able to meet for whatever reason. So it would have to be quite dire straits for that to happen, and we recommended just retaining that through to level 1. Principally in case there wasn't any transitionary legislation in place, because the quorum requirements depend on the COVID-19 notice being in place, and that does expire at the end of June. We of course anticipate that will either be continued or will be reinstated if it does expire, and we do revert back to level 3 or level 4. But it really was just a belt and braces approach, just in case we are in that position again, as we were before the council instated the emergency committee, that we had emergency requirements that we needed to come together, and we just weren't able to do that. But the risk of there not being any transitionary legislation or other requirements in place, I feel is low, so the council could decide to not pursue that delegation. As I said, it was just belt and braces.
Fantastic. If we decide not to continue with this, do we need to change the resolution to actually explicitly remove that delegation, or will it lapse if that motion is not put forward?
I would suggest it would be probably beneficial just to make it clear that that is not continued through the levels.
Fine.
The other option is that you amend motion 2 to make it clear that if we do return to level 3 or 4, that because it currently reads, and the emergency committee is automatically operational within this triennium, and if you added and includes the delegations to the chief executive, that gives you very explicitly that the only time that the chief executive's delegations would reinstate is if we move to a level 3 or level 4 COVID operation.
Agree.
So I'm suggesting an amendment to the second point, and to make it explicit, where you've got the full stop after within this triennium, amend that to read, including the emergency delegations to the chief executive.
Cool. Suzanne, if you could take note of that, and I'll get you to read that when we get to a voting stage. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you so much, because that was exactly what my thoughts were. I mean, to me, I see it being vital that with everything else, you know, that we're needing to, if for any reason, where I know we're being so well behaved, but if for any reason it did end up going back to 3 or 4, I wanted to be able to have that movement in there. So that's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much, Harry. And Karen, thank you.
Councillors, any other questions or comments or discussion? Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everyone. I just wondered whether, in fact, I just need to say level 4, because we've held council meetings at level 3. So is there any reason we want to include level 3, Mary?
I think personally, level 3, the levels are a bit of a movable feast with regards to government stating what is included and not. And level 3, if we move back to a level 3, could end up being as restrictive as level 2. So I'd rather keep it as it is. But if there's an issue with that, we can again have another emergency council meeting to review that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions, councillors? All right. Wow. All right. Let's go on then so we've got the note there. So we want to change the notes that the emergency committee is not operational at level 1 or 2 of COVID-19. However, if the country enters level 3 or 4 of COVID, then the emergency committee is automatically operational within this triennium, and
including the delegations,
including
to
the emergency
executives.
Delegations to the CEO for consideration. So that's just a note, though, isn't it, as opposed to a resolution?
No, that's I'm adding that to the end of the resolution. So you're making it clear that if you return to level 3 or 4,
all right,
then the emergency committee is automatically operational, which includes the delegations to the chief executive.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you. Do we have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Fox. Seconder, Councillor Maynard. I'm about to do a vote, so if you could take yourself off mute. Garrick. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 All those against? Fantastic. The motion is carried. Then level number 3, we agree that for the purposes of COVID-19. Okay, so we've removed that. Sorry, so that we won't vote on that.
Yeah.
So we then we reinstate council committees and subcommittees to operate during level 1 or 2 of COVID-19, but with the exception of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, suspends committees and subcommittees if there is a return to level 3 or 4, level 4 of COVID-19. Do we have someone move that? Councillor Colenso, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Hay. I'm about to do a vote, so if you unmute yourself. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those against? The motion is carried. Great. Well, I think our work is done here. Do we have any further comments from anyone prior to closing the meeting?
Thank you, team. That was great.
Yep. Nice and brisk, but good discussion. I enjoyed that. So thank you very much, guys, and I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Pam.